Hello, welcome everyone. As we start to gather everyone in here to this webinar. Yeah, welcome 2026 sponsorship trends and what they mean for your strategy. I am Jason Smith. I'm the founder CEO of Sponsor CX, and joining me today is sponsorship expert Jim Andrews, good friend of mine as well too. It's just so grateful to have you, Jim, here. Thanks for coming.
Oh my gosh, it's a pleasure to be here.
And let me give. I've got a bio I'm going to read here for Jim. For those that don't know, Jim Andrews. He's the founder and CEO, A-Mark Partnership Strategies LLC. Jim is an acknowledged expert in the fields of sponsorship, event, and sports marketing. He was instrumental in building pioneering sponsorship from IEG into a global leader in industry data, information, and consulting. He has worked with organizations of many stripes to create strategic sponsorship programs focused on best practices and sponsorship assessment, selection, negotiation, contracting, valuation, activation, and ROI measurement. Just a little bit there, just a little bit of things. As a sought-after thought leader, Jim is widely recognized for providing critical insights through educational trainings and content. A frequent media commentator and guest, Jim has been a featured speaker at hundreds of sports and marketing conferences around the world. Jim also is an adjunct lecturer teaching courses in sponsorship and sports marketing for Northwestern University's Masters in Sports Administration program. Jim earned bachelor's and master's degrees in journalism from the Medill School of Journalism, Media, Integrated Marketing Communications at Northwestern. So there's a little bit of a background for my good friend Jim. Jim, anything you want to say to the group before we get started?
Yeah, first I'm looking at the attendee list, and I am impressed by both the size and by the organizations represented. So I'm really excited to do this. It's really lifting my spirits this morning because I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and last night was a little bit rough. So I'm glad to have the opportunity to be able to dive into this today and not have to think about the end of our season last night.
That was rough. We will focus on sponsorship trends and not the Steelers outcome last night. I'm standing today, everybody. By the way, I feel like I got a little bit of energy today, so I'm going to be kind of up and going here. But on your screens, everyone who's attending here, there is the ability to interact a little bit here. Feel free to use the attendee chat. Please make it appropriate. We do have a Q&A section as well too. So as Jim and I are going through the webinar today, feel free to jot down your questions for us, and we'll make sure to leave some time at the end. But if there's one relevant to what we're speaking about, we could potentially kind of pull that in to that specific trend that we're talking about today. But let's make it engaging and a fun hour webinar here together, and see if we can't provide some value that you guys can take back and really apply to your programs. But Jim, where do you want to start with on these trends?
Yeah, I think we've got some slides here that I have the trends on them. So let me. Oh, you've got it, Jason. Sorry.
Yep. No, you're good. You're good.
We both tried to do that. Thank you. So yeah, let's just jump in with this one, which I think is, and some of these trends obviously they didn't start January 1st, right? They're kind of ongoing, but it's something that a lot of people are talking about, and things that we think we'll see more of in 2026. And certainly this idea of these non-traditional brands coming into the marketplace. I think we've all seen that. Think about a lot of times your local pro sports teams and the jersey patches. I know I've had quite a few moments where I've looked and either seen an announcement or been watching a game. It's like, who is that? What is this company? I've never heard of them. And that's kind of the point, right? So, and I think this trend is kind of a mostly good news, but maybe a little bit of bad news. On the good news side, it's great that we are deepening the pool of prospects, right? We can't all keep going back to the Bank of Americas and the Coca-Colas of the world and just expecting them to fund everything. So it's great to see brands again that maybe we've never even heard of coming into the space, spending money on partnerships. So I think that's the positive side, and also especially for smaller organizations, smaller properties. The fact that you now have a lot of examples to point to of companies that are not Fortune 500s but are having success in sponsorship, that's a great story to tell from a sales perspective. It's like I was working with a company last year, a property, and I said, look at what's happening in the Northwest. We got this company, Brightside Windows. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, they took the jersey patch on the Portland Trailblazers and they became an official partner of the Seahawks. And that was like, use that as an example when you're talking to these companies and saying, if Brightside Windows can all of a sudden find a way to get something out of partnerships, you can too. But the flip side of that with Brightside Windows is a good example. They were the jersey patch sponsor for the Trailblazers just for one season. They left after last June, right? And the Trailblazers to come back into the marketplace and find another partner.
Yeah.
So
yep.
When you've got those kind of sponsors, you've got to realize that they're not always going to be long term. There's going to be churn, and you're going to have to go back into the marketplace.
Yeah, and I think, Jim, too, with that, there is a lot more non-traditional. We see here, we have LVT, Live View Technologies on the Utah Jazz patch as well too. But I think these non-traditional ones are going to come in and they're going to want flexibility. They don't sponsor a lot of different properties and organizations, so they're going to come in, and I think you can get them into some longer term partnerships. But the creativity up front is going to be important. And I'm not saying the Portland Trailblazers didn't like make sure that they were activating at a high level. That's why they left. They'll have their reasons of why they left. But in fact, I'm a Portland, Oregon native. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, so Portland Trailblazers are my team. So we'll get them back. We'll get them back to the top there. But really, these non-traditional brands, they haven't done these. So when they come in, they're going to want to see that ROI a little bit quicker, right? They're going to want to see a little bit more of that engagement and be able to test. And so it does make it a little bit more challenging. I think for non-traditional brands, you have to do what the Trailblazers did a little bit. I don't know what the terms of that was, but having it be a little bit more flexible in the first 12 to 18 months to show them the value that comes back can get them into a longer term partnership with you. And that doesn't mean that you don't sign the long-term partnership. I think, you may have the 6 or 10-year deal that's 6 figures or 7 figures, but having that flexibility is important to these non-traditional brands. So that just means that you have to provide the value right out of the gate. And in year one, before that partnership starts, you've got to, what are they basing the success off of, and just making sure that is nailed. And you can have those milestones of the 6 to 10 year deal at the very beginning. So, and it is a little bit higher risk to do that, but that's, in order to get these brands in, that's what you're going to have to do. And sometimes it results in a Brightside Windows, leaving after a year or so, but it also can turn into a longer term partnership and a non-traditional money that you wouldn't have received otherwise.
That's such a great point, Jason. And I think I wasn't inside that deal. My understanding is, though, that I think both of those partners may have gone into that thinking it was just going to be for 1 year. I think
could have been. Totally could have been. Yep.
Yeah, for better or worse, they wanted a quick hit. And we actually have a trend coming up in a review that addresses exactly that the fact that there's real value in long term. But you're right. I think in that case, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe you want to only have the patch for the first year. And that's okay. We can argue whether that's a smart strategy or not. But if that's
another discussion.
Yeah, exactly. But if that's what the brand really is focused on, it's like, fine. But so year two, we'll create a different package. So maybe you don't necessarily want to pay the high amount. I mean, that's millions of dollars, right? You don't have that, but let's keep you as a partner, because obviously there's a lot of other things that you can do. Case in point with that one, and we'll get off the bright side in just a second. They're still with the Seahawks. They're in their second year, and that's a smaller partnership. They're doing a lot of digital content, branding of social media posts that the Seahawks are putting out, and that one they've continued. Obviously, it's a lower price point, and they're able to do that, but they're still obviously getting value out of that one since they're in year 2. So there are lots of different ways to kind of keep these partnerships going and not have to churn and turn over everybody every year, because that's, as we're going to talk about here, that's going to really impact the profitability of the sponsorship.
And if that's the strategy 1 year, that's great. I mean, the property and the brand have to make that decision, whether that's effective for them or not. But I think structuring the deal, a longer term deal, in order to get these non-traditional brands into longer term partnerships, those milestones up front are going to be key, because they want to enter quickly, they want to exit quickly if it's not working. And it's a risk that you take, but I think the long term benefit outweighs it. So I know sometimes it's like, no, we can't sign a 7-figure deal without it being 10 years. But we have to think outside of ourselves a little bit if you want these kind of brands that aren't traditionally in the sponsorship space.
Exactly. They are a different animal than somebody who's been doing this for 20 years and has dedicated sponsorship professionals who are used to this and know what it's all about.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. If we go on to our next trend, it's actually something that we kind of built these, so they are related. I really think that when we talk about exactly what those kinds of situations, one of the things that I don't think at least gets a lot of attention, hopefully it does internally, but maybe externally, and when we have forums like this, is talking about the profitability of sponsorship programs for the properties. I obviously love sponsorship and think it's a great marketing tool. I wouldn't have had this career for decades if I didn't believe in it. But it's not a silver bullet, right? So we have to really be realistic about what are the sponsorship prospects for any particular organization. Sponsorship is a relatively small piece of the revenue pie for a lot of organizations, right? That could be nonprofits because they get more money from traditional philanthropy, whatever it is. And it's realistic about that, about how big a part of the revenue pie is, and then how many resources are you putting to get that revenue back? There's a lot going on there, right? You got to create the offers, you got to identify the targets, you got to research those targets, find out their objectives, negotiate the deal, and that just gets you to the deal, right? Then you've got the fulfillment and the activation and the promotional execution and helping with measurement and all of that kind of stuff, right? So it is resource intensive, and I think that's why sometimes we see you look at a property and you're like, boy, they're going after the low hanging fruit, right? They're selling the signage and the stuff that's easy. And maybe that's because that's all they can do. That's all they have the resources for. But whatever that is, and I've worked with some property clients on this. It's like, let's figure out your sweet spot, because there is a sweet spot for everybody between not putting so many resources against this particular revenue stream that it becomes not profitable, and doing it in a way that you are getting a return. So I always want to urge properties, especially, just be realistic, and that's realistic on the valuation of your packages, and how much you can really commit to servicing and fulfilling and doing all of that.
Yeah, operational is where those margins are. I think it's easy when you think of like the hard costs that you have associated with your property, which is signage costs or this, or how can we pull those down? Those are things that are gonna happen. And yes, there's ways that you can mitigate those, but as you mentioned, Jim, like the operational side, the operational drag that comes from doing that, of having like one person, the brand partnership is so big that you have like 1 or 2 full-time people just on that brand, right? Like that becomes really expensive. And I mean, it could be time spent managing the relationship. It could be time spent on the fulfillment activation. It could be revenue leakage from undelivered and untracked assets. I mean, it could be a lot of different things, but I think the thing that, like, when I was thinking about this, Jim, was like, how do you scale? Like, you have to figure out how to scale your sponsorship program in a meaningful way. And I'm not saying, like, when I say you need to have like clear package, structures, I'm not necessarily saying, hey, if you follow long enough, I don't like gold, silver, and bronze, with sponsorship. That's not what I'm saying.
Yep.
Yeah, like I want creativity and I want all of that, but you have to create systems. You have to create systems in place on the structuring of your deals and standardizing ways to sell and deliver and execute in a high level. And then obviously having flexibility in that framework, but that measuring the cost to service, as you mentioned, Jim, is so key. And if it's the mindset has to shift. Like, if you can't track it and you can't automate it and you can't scale it, then it's just not going to be like a good margin, type of play. And so I think that is the key. We in 2026 becoming better at managing this and scaling it the right way, which you have to look at your systems. You got to look at your team members, where their talents are, and how you structure. And it may be that you completely redo the structure of how you sell sponsorships and execute them. That's up to your property and how to make it more efficient, but you have to build it so that it can scale.
100% agree with that. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it's really, I think sometimes we all are guilty of this, right? We just get stuck. Well, this is the way we've always done it. We're comfortable with our organization, and it's challenging to kind of break things up and maybe start over in some places. And and that actually, so again, these are all related, right? With this idea that the industry is drawing a clearer line between partnerships and sponsorships. What I really wanted to talk about with this one is as it relates to just what you were saying on those sales resources. Because one of the things that I've seen historically, and again, we talk about this is the way we've always done things, is you've got a single team, right? You've got your sponsorship or partnership sales team. And they are responsible for all of that revenue coming from the corporate and the brand marketers. So they're selling everything from benefits packages that have IP rights and signage and tickets, kind of the nuts and bolts stuff, to also the customized, really what we call partnerships with naming rights and exclusivity and co-branded opportunities and all that good stuff that we love. Yeah. And that's, if you think about it, when you again step back and look at that and you say, okay, we've got account managers who are, a lot of times we organize that around industry verticals. So we've got people that become subject matter experts in insurance or packaged goods or whatever, and they're going out and selling those things. Okay, on one level, maybe that makes sense. But you end up then, with somebody just going out, they might start with a prospect who's only going to turn into a 5-figure social media buy, or they could turn into somebody who wants to do a naming rights deal. You don't know when you start that conversation. Again, that system has worked and can continue to work for many organizations. But I think for a lot of others, looking at kind of dividing that up and saying, should we have and part of it is looking at our who we've got on the team and what their skill sets are. Should we put people into roles that if they're good at selling the big packages, the partnerships, let them specialize in that. Let's not have them waste time on selling the small stuff. Those smaller packages are great. Those can be used to train new hires in sales, those kinds of things. Again, maybe we just need to restructure that and say, not every sponsorship is going to be a partnership and vice versa. And maybe our sales efforts should kind of reflect that.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on that a little bit, they are very different. When I look at sponsorship and partnership, I think of kind of two different things here. Like I look at sponsorship as as something a little bit more transactional for, and this might be a hot take for people, but this is like, I look at sponsorship as a little bit more like, hey, I'm a brand that's a little bit closer to wanting to buy media or gain access to something. And partnership for me feels a little bit more business development, brand strategy. I want to build that relationship. Hey, yes, I do care about what's going on in the community in which you guys serve. I want to go on these trips with you guys and build this relationship, and really trying to force sponsorship and partnership into the same thing is a mistake, because you do have, whether they be agencies, whether they be brands that want to just transact. They do want to just buy media, for example, like, and
Right.
sometimes I feel like we try and force them into this partnership piece where it's like, hey, you have to do X, Y, and Z over here to be with us. I personally think that the more that you do that, you're turning away revenue. I think that, to your point, Jim, like having certain people that manage the sponsorship relationships that are a little bit more like, hey, I'm an agency that's placing media with, and we want access to your fans and be able to promote XYZ. Like, I think that's important, and I think it's important to be able to look at that. I know in our industry we prefer the partnership route, though, right? It's like we want the relationship, we want to fill that connection piece, but really it's a different sales motion, sponsorship versus partnership. There's different sales motion to it. There's different fulfillment expectations to that as well too, and there's different success metrics. Like if I'm doing a sponsorship with that, I'm transacting here with a media buy, like that is a different metric that I'm going to show them. I mean, it might be the same, but I'm going to also, if there's a partnership over here that has, maybe the CEO is a huge fan, right? There's just going to be different metrics that I'm showing around that, including the media that they have as well too. And so I just think that when we kind of separate the two a little bit, it's easier to kind of wrap our head around sponsorship versus partnerships. But I think properties that really embrace those that are wanting to purchase, and they can show the data on why that media was really good for them or whatever it may be, actually think they can gain more value. And some may not like that, but that is a reality that they're in. But some of these brands don't necessarily want all the frills. Their only focus is that I want the media benefits, or I want access to whatever logo usage or whatever it may be.
Right. No, there's nothing wrong with that, right? That's
nothing wrong.
But yeah, let's just be realistic about where that fits in the ecosystem, I guess is
totally.
But there, just quickly before we go on to the next one, there was a question that popped up from Ronnie in the chat, and it says, you have in mind a sponsorship agreement that didn't seem like a good idea at first, but ultimately turned out to be a really good deal. I'll say two things about that real quickly. Externally, I think it's always hard to say. I've seen a lot of deals, and when they get announced, it's kind of like, I don't see the fit. I don't understand what's going on here. But that's really, I think, an unfair assessment, because if you're looking externally, you don't know exactly, any business's go-to-market strategy necessarily. You know it from a general sense. But oftentimes when you get inside deals, you're like, oh, okay, now I can see that it makes sense. You would never know that unless you were inside of it. I'm trying to think of an example where I think that, one, and it's a large one, it's the Spotify FC Barcelona deal, which has, again, I think gotten some criticism. And I think at first, especially because it had the naming rights component to it, I think a lot of people were like, why does Spotify, which is obviously, built a very, very strong brand, why do they need to spend, and it's a very expensive sponsorship, why are they spending that much money to put their name on a stadium in Barcelona, even if it is, iconic and all of that. But when you drill down deeper, and I think that relationship has evolved over the few years that it's been around, to where both parties have really been able to identify much more valuable components than just kind of the branding, to where they're sharing data on the Barcelona fans as well as the Spotify music users, and they've really built a really kind of comprehensive partnership. So that's one I would point to. Jason, I don't know if you have an example.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just be quick for time's sake, but the ones that like turn a brand sponsorship into like a charitable type of thing, where you're like, why is it called Climate Pledge Arena, right? It's like, what's the benefit there? And then you see that the cascading effect of like giving back to the community and everything that it does to help with AWS. Same thing here. The jersey patch here in Utah used to be what was it? Five for the Fight, which was cancer. Right. Yeah, Five for the Fight, and that's when Ryan Smith was with Qualtrics when he first initially did that. Now he owns the team, but yeah, like doing those types of things. It's amazing to think of and I don't have the number off the top of my head here, but the millions and millions and tens of millions of dollars that funded cancer research because of that, and then it's the tie back to the brand that was doing it. At first, you're kind of like, what are they doing? But then it's like, oh my gosh, look at the influence that it had. So I think those are some of the first ones that kind of come to mind for me. But
yeah. Hey, let's go back to this idea that you and I were talking about, which was, that the value of the long-term partnerships, right? Because, yes, there could be quick hits for every Brightside Windows that only wants to be there for a year. But I really do think that more brands are saying, we understand that this is a long-term game, and we're going to see value in it only if we stick with it. And I saw some really interesting data from the folks at Sponsor Pulse up in Canada, a good market research firm that obviously specializes in sponsorship. And so if you just look at these two slides that we have, I mean, some of these numbers, it's pretty impressive and just really good evidence of how we know that sponsorship kind of takes time. So you're looking at this one, over 4 years in terms of, how fans are responding, or audiences, participants, whoever it is, respond to sponsorships. I mean, you really if you go from year 1 to year 4 in each of those columns, that's very significant growth in terms of, are they aware of who you are? Are you now getting into their consideration set for purchase? And how do they feel about you? How do they identify you and think about your brand? Really, really significant growth there. And again, not so much necessarily in that first year to the second year, but by year 4, you're really seeing those double digits. And then they also, I like the way they've done this in just terms of looking at cost effectiveness. So, basically, how much are you paying? How much is the brand paying? To reach each fan, each consumer, whoever it is. And again, dramatic difference from year 1 to year 4 in that cost per person impacted, right? From almost $10 to $7 in aided awareness. That the consideration set there, you're looking at that cost is going down by a third from year 1 to year 4. So again, just some I'd love to have data that supports trends and arguments, right? And I think this is really good data that says, there's value in long-term partnerships.
Awesome. Yeah. And for me, like with longer term deals, from an execution standpoint, like longer term deals, that they're designed, right? You've got to outline them and be able to tell this story that you just outlined here, but also, the success of the partnership does need to be defined early. And we've talked about this before, but it starts in year 1 of the partnership. If it's a 5-year deal, you've got from an execution standpoint with a long-term deal, you've got to make sure that you set the stage for what is success. And I just saw this one come through. At my last property, we steered away from media deals because they always seemed impossible to satisfy, between proving out the signage to them comparing what we offered to other media rates that we're getting in the market. We were never able to get on the same page. Might have been a property thing, but the media buyers weren't always good. And listen, like, it might be a hot take and people may disagree with me, but there are buyers out there that just operate that way. And if you're all about driving revenue, then you need to drive in the revenue, whatever possible. But you do need to be able to set those expectations. Hey, if you get a long-term deal with a media buyer on a 3-year deal, for example, you just have to communicate with them differently than a partnership. Like, it's just different, right? And you have to define, just like you would a partnership versus sponsorship, you have to define what the success is. And listen, you may do everything that you're supposed to do and they might still leave, but that's part of the business. They may just, their strategy and their marketing strategy might take them to a different place. Even if you did everything that you were supposed to do, but your number one job is to drive revenue. And yes, you would like to see everybody renew and do that, but driving the revenue as high as possible, you'll drive more revenue. That's just my own personal take. But I think on a multi-year partnership with this, you have to identify whether it's a sponsorship or a partnership. Defining that early is where you'll see the success, which means you have to be asking the right questions to these brands or agencies to make sure that you're showing success. If they decide to leave because even though you've shown all the success that you can, at that point, it just is what it is. Their brand strategy has changed, and you can't necessarily change their minds around that.
Yeah. I will not get into a discussion about media buyers and as it relates to sponsorships, because I'll get too angry. But we've all had.
They're tough. They're tough. They're tough.
Yeah, and it's not, again, it's not that there's nothing wrong with it. It's just it's a different approach, and it can create a lot of extra work, as you said. But we could spend the next half hour talking about that, but we won't. I think, Jason, you said it very, very well. I think this next one is really interesting, and it talks to just some of the changes that we're seeing, just across all things, whether it's events, it's entertainment, it's sports, music, whatever. Beyond that, just in terms of the way we as consumers, we as fans kind of interact with the properties that we love, that we root for, that we are participants, members of, whatever it is. I mean, if you just look at what you could call the fan economy, or fandom in general, it used to be you define them by, are they buying tickets, or are they watching, right? Or are they signing up to run the marathon, or whatever it is. Now you've got so many other pieces that define a fan. It's digital memberships, it's subscriptions, it's joining different social media platforms, it's crowdfunding and attending specific types of micro events and all of these kinds of things. So that is something that on the brand side, I think you got to, as a sponsor, pay a lot of attention to. First of all, I think just paying attention to it is important. Just knowing what those conversations are. I mean, there are so many conversations around any property that you're sponsoring that are happening that you need to be aware of. You need to understand how people are talking about that, how they're talking about you, perhaps, as a partner, and just really kind of, again, at a basic level, listening to that conversation, because that's really kind of driving a lot of the interest and where things are going. So you can learn a lot about your own targets, your customers, by paying attention to those fan communities, again, on social media or whatever it is. It obviously is also an opportunity to get involved with those and really see those as a way to impact and activate the sponsorship. But that can be tricky, right? You've got to be very careful about the way you enter into those communities, because you don't want to be the interloper. You don't want to be the big commercial brand that's just there to take advantage of them. So it's definitely something I think that it's going to require a lot more attention this year and in the following years.
Yeah, and I apologize. Number five isn't on here. What we're talking about fandom here, but but yeah, I mean, really the fandom value comes with when a brand and the fans can really connect, right? And so that comes down. Number one is, as you mentioned, Jim, demographic, but just the tone and the message that the brand is using with them, I think is good. Fans will see right through it all if they, they don't feel like they're communicating to them in the way that they should. Fans know if they belong or not, or if they're just renting some real estate space, in the stadium. They know, and so yeah, you just have to understand that the demographics are actually mapped, that the brands know how to show up. Like, I think it's important to coach them up on how the messaging and tone should be delivered to these fans, and turn marketing assets and inventory into brand strategic messaging, right? And I think that's the key, is that messaging and tone.
Yeah, exactly. And again, something that could definitely use a deeper dive and deeper exploration. But and there it is. We just have them out of order. So we have, for some reason, we have number 6 before number 5.
6 and 5. Yeah. We're learning how to count here.
Yeah. This idea is one that is certainly talking about sponsorships as luxury items, not commodity goods. It's really been around for a while. The terms of we see sponsors properties that are taking a less is more approach, fewer, bigger. It's like we're going to create an exclusive club for 10 sponsors, and they're going to get all of our benefits. They're all going to be category exclusive, and we're going to charge a premium price for that. And I think everybody looks at that and says, "Boy, that's great on paper. That makes a lot of sense."
Yeah.
And I think for those that can do it, I'm a big fan of that approach. But I think what's important is, and I've heard a lot of people say that that's the way that the industry should be going, and I think it's not as simple as that, right? You can't. This is not a one size fits all business, right? Every organization, we've talked about it already, the properties are very unique, and you've got to really match who you are, what market you're in, to what you can do. And a great quick example of this is the Golden Knights in Las Vegas. I saw a statistic last year that kind of shocked me, that they have 200 corporate partners. And my first reaction to that was, boy, that's not good. They should be, fewer, better, more exclusive. Are they delivering value? But I dug a little deeper and looked at what they were doing and talked to them. It is a reflection of who they are and where they are. Las Vegas is the 40th largest market in the country. That's not very big. It's big, but it's not that big. There are not a lot of big corporations based in Las Vegas. There are a lot of businesses there, but they're not necessarily the type that are going to be buying $1 million packages. So they realized, look, we've got to split categories, because we obviously have a few businesses here where we have a lot of players in the gaming industry, most obviously. We've got to be able to have packages that are affordable for smaller businesses, because there's a ton of those in the Vegas market. So they took what the market was giving them and created a sponsorship strategy that works for them, that requires them to have non-exclusive and lots of brands. Again, I just think that was really smart. It's very realistic, accurately assessing, who we are and where we are, and building our strategy off of that, and not just saying, because this worked for FIFA and a few other people, we're gonna go down that road.
Honestly, I think you nailed it. I have nothing else to add to that. That was great. That was great. I guess the only thing that I would say is like, I do think, and the sponsorships have always kind of been sold as this luxury. They're a little bit more, they're more expensive than maybe some other, maybe some digital advertising or things like that. But I think the more flexibility you can provide as sponsors, the better too, as well. I like to think of sponsorship is a little bit more of a portfolio. They invest in, and then they have opportunity to kind of move things around if they need to. Like if they get into one year of 5 years and they're in this item that they thought they really were going to be great, and maybe their marketing has changed a little bit, having some flexibility with them as well too, with some of these luxury items, right, to make sure that it fits their needs. But that's kind of more of an execution than really the side of this. But
right,
yeah, let's go to the next one.
Yeah. Oop, I skipped over. There's number 7. Okay, this is a quick hit for me. I put this on here because I see it all the time. You know, there were a lot of folks who were posting on LinkedIn their thoughts about end of the year and beginning of the year kinds of stuff, and looking at some of the other reports that were put out by various people in the industry and media folks. And I saw this a number of times, this idea that, hey, this 2026 is the year basically that we finally get measurement right. We're going to finally nail this sponsorship ROI piece. And again, this is, you know, a reflection of how long I've been doing this. It made me chuckle because I could literally go back and find that prediction every year for at least the last 20 years, right? I'm sure I could find something from like 2004 that said, this is the year the industry figures out sponsorship ROI. And again, it's been a gradual process. I think we do get incrementally better at figuring out the return on partnerships over time, but we have certainly not ever kind of nailed it. And at this point, I'm not sure that we ever will. I think it's complicated, right? It is not something where it's plug and play and you're ever going to come up with some kind of magic system that says, hey, if you spent $1 million on this partnership, it delivered you $1.5 million in value. We can get close to that. I think we certainly do more, and I think brands can invest more in figuring out their return. And I always will hold brands' feet to the fire and say, you're not doing enough in terms of investing in figuring out the performance. But I don't think this is the year that's a tipping point any more than any year in the last 2 decades.
Well, I kind of just flip it just a little bit, because you're right. Like, this is something that usually is on every list. But one thing that I'm seeing is CFOs being a little bit more involved in it. And I think that has changed a lot. You've got CFOs not just looking at sponsorship, but in the whole marketing spend there as well. And sponsorships fall into it. And sponsorships are the ones where it's like, hey, what was delivered? What changes have we made over the year? And if we got rid of this sponsorship, like, how would that affect us, right? And properties that can help answer these questions for their CMOs that they're working with, or their VP of partnership or sponsorship, or whoever they're working with, being able to help them be able to answer those internally helps you get budget with it. Like, I think everything is just so scrutinized from a financial standpoint now that reporting becomes essential to stakeholders. And you said it, like, Jim, like, it doesn't really matter. There's so many different ways that we could take this on how to report along this, but the fact that whatever you decide that metrics is to be able to track it, that you need to be able to educate them, so they're having conversations with their CFOs, and your sponsorship is under a microscope on its effectiveness. And so it would be ignorant to think that it's not, right? And so you need to be actively showing why, and that's a key piece. Yeah.
So I think this trend, as it's stated there, yes. Will they take I think we get, again, incrementally more strategic. I'm not sure we'll get to exactly where we all want to be or need to be in 12 months, but we're making progress.
Yes, absolutely.
This next one was one that I saw mentioned, and I always say that I read a lot of stuff, so you don't have to. So I literally poured over everything that popped into my email inbox in the last month that said trends or in sponsorship or whatever, and there was a ton of it. And this one popped up, and it kind of surprised me, and because again, it's a little bit of an evergreen. I think we can always say, well, maybe fans have had enough. Maybe we've hit the limit. But again, I think that the public, and again, not just in sports, but but across different types of properties, I think they have a higher tolerance for commercialism than like conventional would have you believe. So I don't think that we're facing kind of a cliff where all of a sudden people are just going to be like, we've had enough. We don't want more names on buildings or things like that.
Yeah, and I also think that when fans do get a little bit more turned off by sponsorship, I think it's because the activation gets a little lazier as well too. Like, and we talked about this earlier a few slides ago on like how do you speak to the fans, right? And like that communication and that tone, if it feels transactional, if it feels disconnected or over branded, right? If there's like just logos like all over the place, that becomes that way. But I think that when I thought of this, it really makes me think of like if you think of like bowl games, and I think you and I were talking about this, not part of this webinar, but it's like, you get like, I'll just throw like the Tax Slayer Bowl, right? It's like, I gotta say Tax Slayer, to the bowl, that one can be maybe Yonner. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But I didn't watch the game, so I can't really tell you. That was the first thing that came to my mind. But then you've got like the Pop-Tarts Bowl, right? Everyone knows the Pop-Tarts Bowl, right?
Yeah.
How like it enhances the moment, right? It feels native, it adds value. You've got a trophy that's a toaster. You've got mascots that are like engaging throughout, and they're like cooking themselves at the end of the game, right? And the team is eating them, and you got a head coach that's eating a Pop-Tart in one bite. Like, I don't know, there's entertainment value there. There's value that comes to that. And I think that is not lazy sponsorship. That is like high impact entertainment. And I think the more that happens, then you don't get the negative backlash. You get more of like applauding it. It's like, oh my gosh, that's actually really fun. I'm gonna go get me some Pop-Tarts.
Yeah.
So
they really have, because you're right. I mean, that's one category where everybody rolls their eyes mostly at the title sponsors, except for, like you said, Duke's Mayo, Pop-Tarts. They've made it engaging. Now we don't mind calling it the Duke's Mayo game because we're entertained. Perfect example. Yeah. So let's look at these last few, and I know I see some questions popping in, but obviously this is one we could take 2 hours to talk about, right? What is AI's? It's going to have a significant impact on the sponsorship industry. I think when I actually wrote this and sent it in for the slides, I put "duh" after it, right? Of course it is. The question is where. For me, I would just point to one example. I really think the properties can really lean into assistance from AI tools in identifying and researching prospects. Again, we talk about those different types of companies coming in. They're not necessarily on our radar screens, right? AI is great at surfacing those and telling us who they are and what they are about and who their decision makers are and all of that. So that, and of course the creative tools to create proposals and things that really look good, all of that. That to me is where I'm just so there's a lot to be concerned about with AI, but I think in that case that's just it's a godsend to properties.
I mean, AI shouldn't take away from like using our God-given like human brains to like
Absolutely.
actually like think of strategy and creativity and all that. We can use it to help modify our thoughts, and do that. But I think AI is going to be more on the execution of sponsorship, of faster prospecting research, cleaner asset tracking, smarter reporting, being able to say, instead of like doing all these filters and things, like saying, hey, I want you to tell me this, and like natural language, like tell and be able to get those reports a lot quicker, and to be able to show your brands as well too. But AI will help you scale. But I always get turn away from the essence of like having it do your job for you. Yes, it can help do your job for you in systems and operationally, and you can tell a software. I know with us, it's like we're working on things here that to tell the AI what to do, and then it does it for you. Those are the execution of the sponsorship is where AI can really help save time and become more efficient. But this is a relationship industry, which takes a human brain and a heart, right? And that's really important to make sure that we keep.
I'm so glad you said that, and I think especially in the communications too. I get so many things now that are obviously AI generated, and it's just kind of like, no, come on. That's the same as an old form letter, right? You just plug the person's name in at the top. It's like that's not going to get you anywhere. So totally agree on that one.
And we got one here, right? 10.
What's that?
Our last one here, number 10.
Yeah, last one. And this is, again, a quick one for me because everybody's talking about the World Cup coming to the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, and it's an exciting time. And, there are a lot of folks out there, especially the big sports folks, right? This is going to have a major, significant impact. I would come off of that a little bit. It'll have a major impact on the sport of soccer and all of our friends throughout all of the different soccer leagues and happy with them. I think for the rest of us, what it'll be, as it always is, we're going to see some really interesting activation programs. We're going to see some companies that maybe haven't really stepped up, do some interesting things and get on everybody's radar screen. So I think it's important to pay attention to. It'll be fun to pay attention to the marketing as well as the matches themselves. But no, is it going to significantly shift the sponsorship landscape? Again, for those of us outside of soccer, no.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think maybe some examples of cleaner activation, like just it's very simplified, right? There, and I think, and you mentioned this too, storytelling. Like I think like brands in that FIFA community being able to share stories, whether it be through ads or all of that. I think there's going to be some really unique storytelling that takes place, and I think those are good to learn from that we can take back to our organizations. But those would be the two for me on this.
Excellent. All right, should we take some questions?
Yeah, let's do it. Do you want to take us through them?
Yeah. So one came in from Wade, and he says, with so many marketers that are harder to reach and less responsive than ever, what approaches are you seeing actually break through and lead to real conversations, especially for sellers that are managing large multi-property portfolios? Well, that's definitely an evergreen question too. Something that we, those of us who have sold, constant challenge. Yeah, to me, Wade, I think that the things that break through that I'm seeing are really that demonstration of we've got your audience, right? We've got your customers, and the proof points of and not only just, hey, our demographics match up with your demographics, but we have gone, again, use tools to really identify not only who these people are, but what they buy, what their lifestyles are, where they're showing up in terms of when we talk about that fandom, and really just being able to paint that really specific picture that says my property or my properties can deliver your customers, right? And just making sure that you're leading with that conversation. That's hard to ignore, and I get it. It's never easy to get those conversations going, especially if you're going in cold. But I think that's leading with that is significant in this case.
Yeah, and I mean it's simple. I mean the best thing is if you're having a hard time getting in. I mean you've got what Jim just mentioned on connecting the value. I mean the value is important, but sometimes it's just getting FaceTime, right? And the best way is to find people that and that they know you and they know them, and that really is the best. Whether it's through LinkedIn or whether it's just personally. Through and if you can be at the same event that they're at and be able to rub shoulders with them and be able to do it, that has always been the best tactic for me to try. People want to deal with you. They get emails, so many emails a day. They get all phone calls and emails and LinkedIn messages and all this. And if they can trust somebody that introduces you, that just makes it that much better. So that's usually been my best way of getting where I need to go, and just putting my efforts into who do I know that knows this person, and then that helps me get there.
Yeah, I would second that. Build your personal networks, use those, turn those a cold call into a warm call with that introduction. That can make a huge difference.
Good to see you here, Wade.
Yeah. Don asks, says, we're in a non-traditional sports market. What are some ways to attract businesses to get into sports partnerships? I mean, for me, Don, I think I referenced this earlier too. I would say case studies. Show examples of businesses that are similar to theirs, whether in size or the sector or category that they're in. There's so many now. I mean, that's again, we talk about that diversity of brands that are involved in sponsorships now. Find those, and they're not hard to find. There's lots of research out there to identify who's doing what, and just say, hey, look at what company X is doing with a property in another market. You could do the same thing with us here.
I have nothing to add to that. That's exactly what I would have said. Yeah, like being able to show comparisons is a big deal. So if you're a rodeo, for example, and you're taking something from another rodeo that's having success with a similar brand, right, and being able to show what's been done, that really helps a lot and tells the story. Even better if they can actually talk to that brand that's doing it in the other, right? So that they can have like, hey, how did you activate on this? How did you do that? I think that's awesome. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah. And I know we're getting close to the end of the time here, and I'm seeing a question from Caesar. He's trying to get us in trouble because thoughts on the shift in gaming, betting, prediction market sponsors, and the integrity of the properties they sponsor. That is definitely an important question. It's a great question. It's certainly one that could require more than a couple of minutes, but I would say it is something that I think everybody is paying attention to. I don't know that anybody has the answer to that, but I know from the sports property perspective, obviously this has been a huge revenue stream for them that nobody certainly wants to turn off that faucet. But I think at the same time, everybody's proceeding very carefully, paying attention to, again, what are people saying? What's the general feeling about this in the marketplace? And when things like a gambling scandal comes up, what impact does that have? A very, very tricky area to navigate. And I just think, again, that's one where if you're doing deals in that category, you want to make sure that those agreements and contracts that you're drafting are really kind of buttoned up and protecting you in case things go a little bit sideways.
No, and thank you everybody for joining. Jim is actually going to be hosting a lot of our webinars kind of going forward. Jim, do you want to speak to that and what we're going to be doing kind of going forward?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think it was probably about a year ago, maybe last spring, maybe you did a webinar, Jason. At the end, you said, boy, I love doing these, but hey, I've also got a business to run here. Sponsor CX is growing. We're doing great things. I don't always have the time to do it. And I think when I saw you at a conference last summer, I said, well, hey, if you need some help with that, I'd love to do it. So we worked that out, and I am really excited to be hosting some webinars. In fact, we've got one coming up 2 weeks from today. So I'll be joined by an old colleague. He's much younger than I am, but a longtime colleague of mine, Patrick Pierce, who's been head of sponsorship for some big brands like Allstate and Aon and Etihad Airlines. Was executive at Endeavor. So we're gonna dive into some things about how to be a good partner. And really, really excited about that. We'll have more information coming out about that one. And I know we've got some great properties lined up for some other webinars, and I'm actively inviting guests. So yeah, really, really appreciate you kind of trusting me with your platform. And I know you'll be joining me when you can with some of these guests. And I think we're gonna have a lot of fun this year.
Yep, that'll be great. Yeah, awesome. Thanks for doing that with us, and thank you everybody for attending today. Hopefully, you gain some value out of it. We'll have this posted for everybody to see. I think we'll be emailing this out to all the attendees as well too. So we really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.